in the Mommy Experience group. How are you guys doing today? It's Ann Kaplan, and I'm here for you guys just like I am every Thursday with some tips and tricks about this week's theme. And this week the theme is meals. Mealtime behavior, and how to handle the challenges that our kids give us when it comes to mealtime. So I'm going to talk about a couple things today that are going to help you guys. And it's so interesting how the universe works, because I've literally been coaching two moms this week alone through this challenge with their kids. One mom is like, oh, my kid will only eat bread. What am I going to do? Another mom is telling me my kid eats so slowly. And I'm like, you can't leave the dinner table until your plate is clean. Oh my gosh. So let's talk about mealtime behavior, whether you're dealing with a picky eater, a slow eater, an eater who complains about all the food. Oh, I hate broccoli. I hate Brussels sprouts. This food looks disgusting. People with rude table manners, all that stuff. We're going to talk about it all right now. And the first thing I want to tell you, my first tip for you, whatever it is that you're dealing with your kids, and this especially works with slow eaters and picky eaters, the first thing that we always need to do as parents, whatever parenting challenge you're having, is remove the fear factor. Because once you're afraid, you are making terrible decisions as a mom. And what do I mean when I say that? I mean the fear that my kid's not eating. I have to get my kid to eat. My kid's not eating enough. My kid might not get enough nutrition. My kid's not eating healthily. My kid's not getting enough vegetables, all those things. Guys, I'm going to tell you something that you know is true, and it's probably going to sound like I'm being too cynical, but I'm just going to say it anyway, which is, it has never happened in the history of the universe that a healthy child has starved to death while sitting in front of a plate of nutritious food. That has just never happened. And you know that, of course, we all know that. But then when we're actually in the moment where our kid isn't eating and we can't even remember the last time they ate dinner and all of these things, it's a lot harder to remember that, because our natural mommy instinct is like, my job is to nourish this child, and it's not happening right now. Like, I have to get this done, which brings me to the second fear factor we need to completely eliminate, which is this fear that you're not doing your job as a mom, or as I always like to sum that up, you fear that you're a bad mom if your kid's not eating. You're not a bad mom, and you're not doing wrong by your child. None of those things. You are not failing your kid if your kid isn't eating sometimes, or is a picky eater, or is a slow eater, or any of those things. And I know that you guys all know this. You probably have heard it a million times, but I would still challenge you on this stuff, because when I'm actually having one-on-one sessions with my clients who are struggling with this stuff, when I say, well, why don't we try this? Why don't we try that? Almost always I get resistance about a lot of the stuff we're talking about. And the resistance comes up in this, well, but he needs to eat. He is not eating. What if he gets sick? What if this or this? And then we talk a little bit more, and it comes out that what's really going on is this mom is feeling like she's not doing her job as a mother if her kid isn't eating properly. Guys, that brings me to my second tip to you guys. So first tip is eliminating that fear factor. Second tip is, what is your job as a mom? Let's remember, when it comes to food, our jobs as parents is not to make our children eat. Because, and if you're my client, you already know, because I've probably said this to you a million times already, you can never make anybody do anything. So when, as parents, we are caught in a power struggle with our children, where we think that our job and the only metric of success for us as parents is if we get our kid to do something, I want you to take a step back right away and reframe that for yourself. Because if you ever think that your job is to make somebody else do something, you've already told yourself a fallacy. That's not your job. So no wonder you can't succeed at it. It was never your job in the first place. And that is true of food. Your job as a mom is to provide your child every opportunity to eat healthy food. It's your child's job to choose to put that food in their mouth. Your child is the boss of their body, as they should be. You don't have power over them to make them eat, and it's okay that that's the case. Now, of course, what we're talking about right now is kids who are not diabetic, who do not have really severe nutritional challenges and things like that. I just want to make that very clear. But for the vast majority of us, What's going on with us and our kids is a simple power struggle, just like it is with so many other things. Kids are so good at finding the things that we are powerless to stop them on and digging their heels in about it. And almost always it's food, sleep, or pooping or peeing. And food, that's why food is a huge one. So remember always that your job as a parent is to provide the opportunity for your child to eat healthily. That's it. So that can help us with that fear factor thing of like, I'm not doing right by my kid. I'm not doing a good job because I'm not getting my kid to eat. That was never your job. Okay. So now let's talk about all these eaters: picky eaters, slow eaters, complaining eaters, and rude table manner eaters. Let's talk about it. When I'm working with my clients one-on-one, we actually sit down and come up with a mealtime routine that includes what is the mealtime routine. Let's be realistic. And then what are the rules around mealtime and how are we going to enforce those rules? And if you know me, you already know that I'm going to advocate using natural consequences to enforce those rules. So let's talk about that. When it comes to picky eaters, power struggle, right? They want control because all human beings want control, and children are no exception because they're humans. They want to feel like they have power and agency, and especially over their own bodies. So the more that we pressure and push our children about food, the less likely we are to get any sort of cooperation or compliance from them. The less you care if they eat or not, the more they're actually going to choose to eat or not based on what they actually want instead of this desire to defy you. So the more that we say things to our children like, you can't leave the table until you finished your plate, you can't do this or that until you finish your plate, I'm saving your food and you're not allowed to have any other food, and that will never be offered to you until you finish the food that I've given you right now. All of those things are not encouraging your child to have a healthy relationship with food. They're not going to help your child's problem of power struggling. So instead, when your child is a picky eater and says to you, I don't like this, I don't want to eat this, blah, 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 blah. And this goes for complaining eaters too. In our house, I say to my kids all the time, that's totally cool, honey. You never have to eat something you don't want to eat. I'll never make you eat something you don't want to eat. And then, of course, the next question is, well, can I still have a treat? And you say, well, treats are for kids who eat their dinner or their lunch or whatever. But you do what you want to do. It's totally fine. And that's it. I'm not talking about it anymore. So the picky eater thing is really a problem that I know feels harsh to hear, but we create that problem ourselves when we're like, oh, I'll just make macaroni and cheese because I know they're going to eat that. And every time that they don't eat it, we either fight with them and cajole them and pressure them to eat it, or we give in and make them something else. We're just creating a monster there. Okay. Picky eaters. Same thing with slow eaters. In our family, we have a slow eater, and there's nothing wrong with being a slow eater, but at a certain point, the meal is over. So I will say to my kids, dinner is going to be over in 5 minutes, or lunch is going to be over in 5 minutes. And some of my clients will say, like, dinner is served from 6 to 6:45 or whatever it is. And when that clock strikes whatever, dinner's done. And the kids will always complain if they're not done eating, but that's okay, because I promise you, your child's not going to starve to death. I promise you. But if you indulge the slow eating, it's often not really slow eating, it's distracted eating. Am I right? So the more time that we give these kids and the more distractions we allow them to indulge in, the more that they're going to be slower and slower and slower and slower. So you can come up with your own rule around slow eaters. I have clients who are like, well, you can sit at the table as long as you want and eat, but we're done and we're going to clear the table apart from your dinner, and you do whatever you want to do. That's totally fine too. Mommy is not about telling you what rules you need to have in your house. It's about empowering you to figure out your own rules. So those are just some ideas to handle the slow eaters. And back to the dinner time rules, whatever your rules are that you've made, whatever your mealtime rules are, it should also cover things like rude table manners and complaining. So I'll tell you what our rule is in our house. Definitely doesn't have to be your rule. But in our house, the rule for table manners is if you behave rudely at the table, or you can't sit still at the table, or you complain about the food at the table or whatever, you're excused. And excused means you go to your room until the meal is over. It doesn't mean you can just go and hang out in the living room or go play with your toys or go to your friend's house or watch TV or any of those things. You're either sitting with us at the table or you're by yourself in your room. And it's not a shamey thing. You're not in trouble. No one's yelling at you or anything, but if you are not in a place where you're actually enjoying and enhancing the experience of everybody at the table, then you need to be away from the table so that everybody else can actually participate in the meal and connect and all of those things. So in our house, that's the rule. And when you sit down and make your rules, think about what those rules are going to be and think about how you're going to enforce them, because rules only work if you actually enforce them. So that is my last tip to you guys, is create your natural consequence, whatever it is, whether it's you're removed from the table, whether it's dinner's done at this time, or whatever. Consequences are not punishments. Remember that. And especially when we're talking about food, it is so, so, so important not to be bringing frustration, shame, pressure, guilt, any of that stuff to the table, because Lord knows our society creates dysfunctional relationships with food all on its own. We do not need to be contributing that for our children, right? So think about what those natural consequences are going to be and how you're going to administer them with love. And if you need help with that kind of thing, reach out to me. I've got 2 things I can give you guys: a free guide to getting kids to listen the first time we ask, and I'm happy to also share with you the audio recording of my masterclass, 3 Secrets to Raising Great Kids Without Losing Your Sanity. All of the things that are in those giveaways are totally commensurate with all of the philosophies that we've been talking about just now in this thing, not just for meals, but in general. How do you want to raise your kids? How do you want to discipline your kids? How do you want to keep cool with your kids, not let them get under your skin, all of that stuff. And overall, the thing I hope you take away from this week over everything is that it is possible for you to create a routine around food that fits your family, and that it's worth it to spend a few times lovingly enforcing those rules and that routine to get this lifetime of enjoyable mealtime with your family, because it can be really, really wonderful, truly. I hope that's helpful for you guys. Let me know if you want either of those or both of those freebies, and I'll be posting those links in the comments below. Love you guys so much. Have an amazing week.